Hey, team players, and welcome back. This is a good day. You know why? Because the trade deadline is finally over, and we don't need to talk about speculative will someone get traded. We can finally move into moving with actual battle plans to win your league, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Sit starts. Let's win this week. Week 10 is our time. Let's go. And yeah, so first off, guys, we always love when you're sending your questions and comments before we kick off the show here today, and we got a bunch of them ready to roll through. But Bob, with the trade deadline coming and going, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, I got to say that I see a couple of the moves are intriguing to me. So the first move that I think is really intriguing, that really sets off some really concern for me about some fantasy players, particularly Brian Thomas Jr. here, is Jakobi Meyers going to the Jaguars. That really speaks volumes about what they feel Brian Thomas Jr.'s health is, because as we said last week, they're 5-3. So they're still in a good place to potentially make a playoff run. So they went out there to get a piece that they feel could help them make a playoff run. It's a good landing spot for Jakobi, because we did say, and we've been saying, that it's very difficult for players to be productive within the first 1, 2 to 3 weeks of them being in a location. Yeah. However, this spot is actually a great landing spot. Would I start Jakobi this week? No, but it's a great landing spot.
I think it's a great landing spot with Hunter being hurt, but knowing that it's the most complex offense in football, it's going to take longer than your average bear to jump into.
So from a fantasy perspective, do I think it's great for Jakobi in the long term? Probably. From the perspective of short-term stuff, no. But for the Jaguars, I think it's an incredible move, because when you look at it and you see, okay, Brian Thomas Jr. is dealing with some health stuff. Travis Hunter's already out. I have Jakobi, potentially longer term. And if I want to put Travis Hunter on defense a little bit more, it opens the doors, because they like Parker Washington as well. And so this kind of for me, trims the end of Diami Brown's time, as potentially fantasy relevant, dealing with a couple of those concussions. So I think that move's interesting. I also think the moves by the Dallas Cowboys are interesting, just from the perspective of they've had a terrible run defense, and they went out there to get two players that are particularly adept, I would say, at trying to stop the run, especially Quinnen Williams. But Logan Wilson gives them an extra piece in that linebacking core to maybe play around with some of the coverages and schemes that they run. So maybe those matchups against Dallas's defense going forward for running backs that strictly, run the ball up the middle might not be as productive. So it's something to think about. And then the move of Sauce Gardner to Indianapolis, I think, means absolutely nothing.
It doesn't. Yeah.
It's a huge move. But Sauce has been playing really, really bad. From a fantasy perspective, I don't think it affects when I want to roll somebody out versus the Indianapolis Colts, because I do think that that's all about time of possession and all that stuff. But at the same point in time, they went out there and they know that they need to win now. So they went out there and got a piece to get them to win now. Some players that didn't get moved, weird. Tennessee's still rolling with what they've got. Nobody wanted anything from Tennessee. Nobody wanted to do a lot of things.
Didn't get moved. The Jets offense didn't get touched.
With the Jets offense, I just thought some of those things were unusual. So, a lot of non-moves, and the Steelers going out there and signing MVS to the practice squad and not going out there and getting another receiver is totally Mike Tomlin of them, thinking that they can win with the dregs, and it just. It was a Steelers move through and through, but they did go after Kyle Duggar earlier. So let's get into some of these questions, Joe.
It's mostly defensive trades. If you really break it down, a lot more.
And I like that. So Jesse, what's happening? Cece, what's happening? Revin and Jason and everybody in the chat, Scorpion and Quincy. Thanks for joining us today. So let's start off. Would you grab Tucker? I would. And there's one.
Of course you would.
There's one reason why, is that you are, and we all know that Geno Smith is going to have to sling the rock as much as possible
Yeah.
in order for the Raiders to be competitive in any game. They're not going to just be able to sit back and run Ashton Genty, 25 times. So when we look at this, is it going to be a particularly productive year for Trey Tucker? Probably not. But when we think about how many attempts Geno is attempting, if he's on the higher side of his attempts, like in the 30s, and not on that lower side in the early 20s, I think it's going to be a nice kind of year for Trey Tucker, because they're going to get Jack Beck involved. They're going to continue to get Brock Bowers involved, and he's going to get most likely 6 to 7 targets a game if Geno's throwing the ball 30 times a game. If not, he's going to settle into that 4 or 5. Is he going to be something that you would want to immediately start? No, but if he gets a good amount of looks, you could see yourself rolling into him depending upon how the week's matchup is. I think that when you consider all of the other options that are out there, if he's still available, sure. I mean, we saw what his pure upside was in that 30-point game that he had a couple weeks ago, Joe. So, like, Trey Tucker is perfectly viable as a guy I'd pick off of waivers.
Yeah.
And when I get to this next question about Gadsden or Bowers, the stats, all of the stats are pointing that
Bowers, no doubt,
that you don't want to sit Brock Bowers. But one of the things to be mindful of, especially over the last 4 games, is when you go in and you look at the stats deeper, that the Denver has played tight ends a little bit better. But then we go and we take a look at what tight ends they've played over the last 4 games. And these are the tight ends that they've played. So they played Jake Ferguson, they played Dalton Schultz, and they've played Theo Johnson, and they played Mason Taylor. So when you look at all of those players and you're like, oh, well, what are the stat lines for those guys? And you're sitting at, Jake Ferguson got zeroed out against the Broncos. Dalton Schultz got 6 receptions for 77 yards. So when you look at this, you got to say it is Brock Bowers, even though Gadsden does have a good enough matchup here that it would be perfectly fine to throw Gadsden, because here's the thing. Gadsden plays the Steelers, and the Steelers, while they did stop, Warren last week, they have not been great against the tight end either. So if you wanted to roll with Brock Bowers tonight, you ride the hot hand. He scored 40 plus points last week. It'd be hard to bench Brock Bowers at that point in time. But Gadsden's going to have a good game too.
It would be.
I mean, Gadsden's probably going to get 15 to 20 points, probably conservatively somewhere around 12. But Bowers could absolutely wreck that. The only thing holding you back is if they and here's the other thing. With them even if they get down early, they're not going to stop throwing the ball to Brock Bowers like some of these other teams can or will do. So it's Bowers for me, even though I do like Gadsden. CC, Commanders fire sale alert. Sent out an offer of Debo for one.
Yeah, it is.
Here's what I think about. So if I'm selling Debo right now and I'm looking to get Wandale, there are a lot of people out there that aren't going to want to buy Debo. And that is a fair enough assumption to make that a lot of people don't want to buy. Most people don't want to buy Washington right now. And the target share with Marcus Mariota is good enough that I'm not totally scared off. I'm not totally scared off of Debo, but what we know about Wandale Robinson is getting a phenomenal amount of usage in this offense with Jackson Dart. He's getting 24% of the targets for his team right now over the course of the year. And so when I look at it and I say, all right, is that accumulate? He's at a 540 yards on the year, which is like almost his total from last year. So when I look at it and I say, is that a guy that I want? Yeah, sure, I want him. And if they want to throw me back Brian Robinson Jr. along with Wandale to get Debo, yeah, I'd do that. I don't think he'd be able to get MHJ as long as Jacoby Brissett's the quarterback for the next 4 weeks, because he looked good with Jacoby. And I don't think that I'd want Aaron Jones because of the injury risk. So, yeah, if I could get Wandale.
Oh, man, they learned how to do a timing route. He looked amazing.
I would. Like Wandale's a perfectly credible player this year to put into your back end flex or even your wide receiver 3. What do you think about that, Joe?
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. You're not getting Harrison.
No,
you're just not. You're not going to get Harrison. but I like where you're at there.
Yeah, I mean, and it's going to be hard to get anybody to want Debo right now. To be honest with you, I mean, people are definitely scared off by the.
I mean,
I do think that he is dealing with a bit of that injury still, and we know that when he gets injured, he gets slowed down a considerable amount. But even on the totality of the year, he doesn't have a lot of yards. So people are going to look at that and say, "Oh, Debo's the name," but Wandale's the guy that you want. And it's just the way that the stats break down right now. Who do we like more this week? Franklin or Parker Washington? So there's a lot of ways to look at this. And one of the first ways to look at this is just pure target share. And what we know is that Troy Franklin has been getting a large majority of important targets for Denver. We see that Evan Ingram isn't getting targets. Right now on the year, Troy Franklin is at 21% of the targets for his team. Cortland Sutton's around 20. So it's pretty much even. Cortland Sutton's run a considerably more routes than Troy Franklin has, but their catch percentages are around the same, and they've looked pretty good. And then when you go to Parker Washington is going to run primarily out of the slot still. And so with the injuries still to Jason Petrie and stuff that they're dealing with, that could be a good enough matchup for a guy like Parker Washington. So I still would say that I would tend to roll with Troy Franklin because of the amount of receptions to wide receivers that Vegas is giving up on the week. But I wouldn't count out Parker Washington over the course of the week. If I decide to start somebody, if I had an injury or something that I could slot Parker Washington in, but I think that I am starting Troy Franklin just because the matchup is good. The target share is going to be good. And I don't have to worry about who they put on Parker Washington from the Denver side of the defense, or not the Denver side of the defense, the Houston side of the defense, if that makes any sense, Joe.
It definitely makes sense.
So
I think you just want to avoid Houston's defense.
Yeah. On my 7-2 squad, I have Brees and Isaiah Davis on the bench, CC said. Would you package them and sell now or hold to see how the Jets backfield shakes out? I mean, here's the thing. When you look at the rest of the year for the Jets, and what we know about the Jets schedule and just the Jets in general is they are a team in flux. And the other thing that we know is they just gave away their best defensive pieces. So now they couldn't stop anybody before. Now they really can't stop anybody. So when I see that and I paint that picture and I see that Breece Hall, if he's going to be utilized, he's going to be utilized mostly in the pass catching game or for them to get out an early lead and for them to hold a lead. So they're going to want to use Breece Hall as much as possible because they are going to want to have time of possession in their favor for the majority of the games that they have left on the season because they will not win if they cannot keep the time of possession. So when I look at the rest of the year, this week is the Browns, next week's the Patriots, the week after that's the Ravens. Browns and the Patriots have two of the best run defenses in the league. Then you go to the Ravens, which are kind of like a sieve, and the Dolphins, which are kind of like a sieve, but somehow stop Bijan Robinson. Then you have the Jags, which are so-so. They don't have a pass rush. So the matchups are good enough that in those weeks after this Browns-Patriots game, you have Ravens, Falcons, Dolphins, and then Jags. And for your fantasy playoffs, you're sitting on Jets versus Pats and Jets versus Saints. I think it's enough that if you wanted to package them now, you should package them now because there's a fair chance that neither of them are going to hit their ceiling value for the rest of the year. Just because of the way that the offense is probably going to run. And if you believe they won't control time of possession and you believe that they're going to be in comeback mode, Breece Hall is going to be an important part of comeback mode. But the fact of the matter is that, they face two really hard run defenses this year or this next 2 weeks. You're not going to win with them the next 2 weeks. So you might as well send them to somebody who maybe thinks they need to win now to try to get something that's going to win for you in the future. Because again, like I said, week 17, when you're in your fantasy championship game, they play the Patriots again. And there's a chance that the Patriots nobody's going to be benching their starters week 17. So there's going to be playing a full complement of snaps against, another good rush defense. So I think now is the perfect time to get rid of them. And I would not be mad if they popped off. I would just go after who I think is a good option for the long term over the rest of the year. How do you feel, Joe? Where'd Joe go? There he is. Just pressing buttons over there, Joe. Darnold won me my week last week with Jayden Daniels out. Plan on playing him this week, of course, but Flacco's on the bench. Week 11, Flacco or Darnold? CC, you're not a sicko, but we love week 11 questions. So let me pull up week 11 real quickly so we can take a look at those matchups. It's going to be hard for me to not start Joe Flacco. So let's take a look at who the matchup is because I haven't looked that far ahead into the crystal ball yet. They're playing the Steelers. You start Joe Flacco. Darnold is going to hopefully have a good matchup against the Rams, but the Rams can be a little bit stingy at times to quarterbacks. Again, they weren't as stingy to Mac Jones in that game on Thursday night, so that's something to keep your eye on. But the Steelers, they played Daniel Jones really well. They played that game to allow Daniel Jones to make mistakes. They've seen Joe Flacco numerous amounts of times, but I do think that at this moment in time in week 10, that I am starting Joe Flacco week 11 instead of Sam Darnold. And for anybody who has questions in the chat, we are Local Football Flavor. We answer every question that comes in. So if you don't see us answering your question right away, just know that we will answer your question. We have not forgotten about you. And if you want to sit tight, we will get to your question. If not, you want to watch us on replay, that is cool too. So CC, your next question here. Was able to get A.J. Brown for QJ and Worthy. Love that. He's questionable, though. Would you play Garrett Wilson Sunday or wait on A.J.? I think you're going to get good information about A.J. Brown prior to Monday's game. Everything that I was just looking up before we went out today said that A.J. Brown was practicing. He was practicing Thursday. But again, A.J. Brown with the hammy is a little bit nerve-wracking at times because we've seen him with hamstring injuries before, and we've seen him come off for a low amount of receptions in a game. And I think that right now that with what they're saying about Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson is looking and trending towards playing, I think that Wilson would be my start right now. But I would be a little bit hesitant just because it is Cleveland, and Cleveland can get to Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor. So I would be cognizant of what quarterback is starting. And if Justin Fields is starting and hyper-targeting Garrett Wilson, again, just to understand, most of the Cleveland Browns are only allowing around 11 total receptions over the last 4 games to a wide receiver grouping. And again, there's not many wide receivers to go there. So those all could go to Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson could have 8 receptions in this game.
Probably not.
But he might get 4. So it really depends on what quarterback is starting there. I would say that both of these guys are in the same category for me. Garrett Wilson is the start right now, but if I get a good practice from A.J. Brown on Friday and a good practice report on Saturday, then I'm starting A.J. Brown. But if I'm getting bad news on Friday and bad news on Saturday, then I'd play Garrett Wilson.
And A.J. Brown should win all tiebreakers.
Yeah, I mean, on a better offense. Yeah, you go with the player on the better offense, I think. I'm scared for the Commanders with Dan Campbell steaming off that loss. Is Monty a must start? I think most people are a must start against the Commanders this week. But the answer
to your question is yes, Monty is a must start.
Yeah, I mean, they're not good. When you just look at in comparison over the last 4 games to running backs, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th in total fantasy points given up to running backs. And again, that's not coming through targets. That's coming through 23 total rush attempts and a boatload of yards. They're not giving up a lot of touchdowns to running backs because they're giving up a lot more to wide receivers. But it's a great matchup, and I don't think that you can bench Montgomery this week against Washington because, again, like you said, and like we know, when Dan Campbell loses, he gets mad, and his team plays better for him. So keep that in mind. And we see all the DDs in the chat too, guys. We will get to all of those. Genty or Rachaad White this week. I'm on Ashton Genty, and here's why. It's not like Denver's an incredible matchup for the running back group anytime they face the running back group. But what I said to you guys,
Bob might be the only person on the internet who's been pointing this out, and he's been right the whole time. Bob has been so right that Denver cannot stop the run the way people think they can.
So Denver, what you need to know about Denver is Denver gives up so many rushing attempts to running backs, okay? Top 5. But the thing that Denver limits is the total number of rushing yards and targets to running backs. So you're going to see, when you look at a stat pool, you're going to see them, and they're going to be low in terms of the fantasy points per game given up to running backs. However, the two things that are against them and which could work out in their favor is that they are top 10 in terms of touchdowns allowed per game over the last 4 games to running backs, and their rushing attempts are in the top 5. The rushing yards are not that high.
Bob, let me pause you right there and break down why that's happening.
Say that again.
So the thing with Denver is, let me break down the thing that's happening with Denver. There's 2 factors that are predominantly going into this. The first is that their offense doesn't score as much as the Bo Nix crowd wants you to think. They are a very slow starting team. And in general, the way teams are attacking them is let's wear the hell out of them. And oh, by the way, don't ever throw. So it's not necessarily that you ever have to stop running the ball. As long as you're a disciplined team and you're willing to keep pounding at them,
and I can't say the Raiders are
That's why you see these touchdowns per game.
I can't say the Raiders are disciplined, but also Patrick Surtain being out would really drastically change some things. But again, what you need to me, that's an important factor. And when I'm looking for running backs to start, I want running backs that are going to get attempts, because what I know is that when Ashton Genty gets the opportunity to have, just a lion's share of the carries in this offense, he's going to have a productive game. I mean, you look at the times where he had carries, 21 carries against the Bears, right? 23 carries against the Titans. He had a touchdown in both of those games. So what I'm looking at is that I'm looking at, if you're going to have, or if the Raiders are going to win this game, it's going to be Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty. And I cannot bench Ashton Genty knowing that Rachaad White has a tougher matchup against a tougher run defense than on paper. And this is going to kind of blow your mind too, Joe, is New England is only giving up over the last 4 games, 13 total rushing attempts. That is a huge.
That's because that team scored points themselves.
That's a huge disparity. If I can get 10 extra carries from Ashton Genty, I'm taking the 10 extra carries. And you're gonna be like, oh, well, Denver's D is good. They are ish, but like you said, Joe, there are things to keep in mind. There are idiosyncrasies to that. CC here with the quick hit. And we do see the deep dives, guys. We will get to the deep dives after a couple more quick hits coming down the line. Start 2, Shaheed, Dobbs, or Nico. I think it's Dobbs and Nico. Davis Mills knows he has to get the ball to Nico Collins. And that's not going to change. Yes. Is he an inferior quarterback to CJ Stroud? Yes. Does he throw for as many yards as CJ Stroud? No.
Oh, yeah.
But he is going to hyper target Nico Collins. We know this for a fact. Now, as it goes to Romeo Dobbs, Romeo Dobbs, again, is in a tougher matchup, statistically speaking. But I think if they're going to keep pace with Philadelphia, they're going to have to keep Romeo Dobbs involved. And he's averaging 7, 8, like we talked about on Monday, 7 to 8 targets a game. And he's catching a whole bunch of those. And Shaheed's going to a new team on a short schedule here, new team. I think you got to roll with the guys that are getting the targets. Even if you're going for something of a ceiling, that Dobbs and Nico offer you a high ceiling as well. It's Dobbs and Nico for me, and I think Joe agrees with that.
No, I do. I totally do.
Assuming Bucky is out, he's trending to be out. He missed 2 practices. If he doesn't practice tomorrow, he's definitely out. I'm starting Rico and White. I need to start one wide receiver. Tet, already starting Rico, Wan'Dale Robinson, Shakir, and then 2 flexes, Vidal, Kamara, Shakir, Wan'Dale Robinson. So when it comes to the wide receivers here, and I saw another question in the chat about Tet. Tet scares me this week, guys. And Joe, the reason why is not because of Tet as a talent, it's because of Bryce Young. And one of the things over the last 4 weeks, and I'm just taking the sample size, over the last 4 weeks, the Saints have only let up 18 total completions to quarterbacks. Now, that's through a variety of circumstances, right? But 18 total completions for a guy like Bryce Young is not high. Now, if Tet, who is getting around 24, 26% of the target share, if we go with what New Orleans does and gives up about 25 attempts in a game, and Tet gets 26% of those attempts, Tet's going to have a decent game, but it's not going to be great. And it's going to be limiting to some factor. And you have Rico there, and I don't really want to start 2 Carolina Panthers. I think that's important to keep note of. Then with Wan'Dale, we just saw Chicago in a slugfest with Cincy. You have to start Wan'Dale Robinson. It's not even a question. And then when you look at Shakir, Allen is, in a good matchup. Yes, the Dolphins have played quarterbacks better, but they've also played Kirk Cousins in the past 4 weeks. So the stats are kind of manipulated poorly in that way. But Josh Allen is one of the league's greatest quarterbacks of the last couple of years. You got to start Shakir, even though Shakir is a guy that we would not normally start. He's getting a good amount of volume. If he falls into the end zone, it's going to be a good week. So for me, I'm starting Wan'Dale Robinson in my wide receiver position. Then when I go to the flex, I think that I land on Shakir. And then, Vidal, he's still the RB1. They didn't make a move to get anybody better there. If you want to start all 3 wide receivers, you can. Kamani Vidal, it's going to be a tough matchup against the Steelers. They stopped Jonathan Taylor, and their offensive line is actually good. Will they stop Vidal? Probably. So I'm probably landing on all 3 of the wide receivers and none of those running backs, which is very much not my style. So Joe, how do you feel about that? Like, I feel gross saying that,
dude.
But
I know you do. I can feel the grossness coming out of you. But the reality is you're 100% right. You can't play 2 Panthers under any circumstances. So, to me, it has to be Rico and Vidal, and then that's the end of your running back discussion. Therefore,
but he needs 2 flexes. So the question is,
the receivers win. The other ones are unstartable.
No. He's at 1 wide receiver still, and then 2 flexes.
Oh, I'm messing this up. Okay.
Yeah. So it's Rico and White. Then you have one of those wide receivers, and then do you start the other 2 that you didn't pick, or do you start one of the running backs?
White. I'm starting Vidal instead of White.
Okay, so you're starting Rico and Vidal, then you're starting Wan'Dale and Shakir, and then you're not starting Kamara.
No, you can't.
So by default, you start Tet.
No, I'm starting Wan'Dale instead of Tet.
Well, yeah, it's
I didn't even start
Wan'Dale.
White instead of Tet.
No, it's Wan'Dale, Shakir. You said Rico and Vidal instead of White, and then you're either on White or Tet.
I'd have to go White.
You're not starting Kamara, so
I'd have to go White.
And Vidal's not in a good matchup, guys. So for
me, Vidal is in potentially an amazing matchup because the Steelers will break at some point. They do it every other game. So
but Joe, like looking at the stat sheet, and this is just over the last 4 games, the Steelers have only allowed 9 total points to RB1s.
9
and 16 total to the whole running back room on 18 attempts with that injury to Joe Alt. And we saw a great offensive line for the Colts and Jonathan Taylor did nothing. So will that happen to Vidal? That's I don't
know. Here's the thing with that last game against Taylor. You can't blame him for Daniel Jones looking like last year's version of Daniel Jones, where he was getting strip sacked every 10 minutes. The Steelers that's actually the thing that could hurt Vidal more is if they are able to get their pass rush there. But
that's what I'm worried about.
If you watch the film, you have to run at the Steelers to stop them. And if there's any coach that will do it, it's Harbaugh. Both of the Harbaughs.
That's what I'm worried about. But the other thing,
I think they're going to run right through the Steelers. I think it's going to be a shootout because of Vidal.
But Joe, the other thing
I'm worried about Vlad. So I'm worried about that game.
Against the Packers, they held Josh Jacobs to 13 rush attempts and Emmanuel Wilson to 11 rush attempts. So it's not cut and dry for me if Vidal is actually a good play this week. In theory, he's a good play. I think in theory he's a better play than Rachaad White. Just based off of that stat sheet that we know because of the rush attempts. I think he's a better play based off the rush attempts than White. But the fact is, I don't really want to start two Panthers. So then you're stuck in this thing where it's yes, the Panther is actually the better play than Vidal to some circumstances. But let's keep going. We'll talk about that one more, Jason. Do I drop Ayuk, Monangai, and Jets Isaiah Davis and put Ricky on IR? You know what, Jason? I am at this point in time because I have held Ricky and I have held Bucky on my team, and it's been eating my roster, and it sucks, and it absolutely is terrible. And my one team isn't doing great because of that. But I am looking at Ricky, and I'm saying, when are they going to bring him back? Ayuk is not worth having. Ayuk, they said, is not even close to being open to practicing right now. So I think that Ayuk is a safe drop. I don't think he will make a difference or as much of a difference as you will need to have in order to get into your lineup, okay, during fantasy playoffs or anything like that. When I look at the best handcuffs to own, I'm still on keeping Monangai. I am not dropping Monangai at all. If I'm dropping Ayuk, yes, I'm picking up Ricky Pearsall because I think Ricky Pearsall's position in this offense is much different than Brandon Ayuk's. And even if Ayuk is playing, he's not going to garner the lion's share of the targets. Ricky Pearsall plays in a similar-ish positional, advantage to George Kittle. So they're going to share whatever targets are in that zone, and Christian McCaffrey as well. But Ayuk and Jennings are kind of that share of those targets, and Jennings is a better option right now. So it really depends on what's available, Jason, in your league right now. But just to answer this question very specifically, I'm definitely on getting rid of Ayuk. And if I want to pick up Pearsall, I'm picking up Pearsall. Now, as it goes to these other positions, I don't think Amari DiMercado had a good enough game. He had the game Bam Knight was supposed to have. Let's just be honest, okay? He had the game Bam Knight.
Who's ever rely on Bam Knight?
Tootin, I think, is interesting when it comes to a running back perspective. Nick Chubb, I would say, is interesting, but he's already dealing with some toe stuff. We know toe injuries are weird in the NFL. Devin Neal, I think I liked Devin Neal about 2 weeks ago. And then they brought in Audric Estime. They brought in Audric Estime from Denver. So I am no longer on the Devin Neal bus. When they could have given Devin Neal an opportunity this past week, they didn't. So I don't think that he's worth a hold. I don't think Chubb is worth it. I think out of all these guys, Tootin is the most interesting to me, and Corum, because it looks like if Kyron Williams goes down,
Corum's the one I'd rather have.
Corum is the next one up. But would you rather have Pearsall or Corum, Joe? That's the question. And I think
I'd rather have Corum.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that Corum would be better. And as it goes to Isaiah Davis, I think
there's a scenario you can build where Corum can win you your league. There is no scenario you can build where Pearsall is. So assuming everything else equal and you're not in need of one position over the other one, I'd go with Corum because of that.
Yeah. And the same goes for a guy like Tootin. Like if you want to drop Isaiah Davis for Tootin, both of them
I would do that.
Both of them have like similar usage outlooks, but
the one's
Jags
not a Jet, so therefore it
the
wins.
Jags can move the ball. So I think I'd land on Tootin. So I drop Ayuk.
I should just get a sign, but you're not a Jet, so life is okay.
You can pick up Ayuk. You can drop Ayuk to pick up Corum.
What you say when you call it the suicide prevention line? Hey, you're not a Jet.
And Isaiah Davis for Tootin, I think is fair. Starting Cook and Genty, they need help with start two wide receivers. Pittman, Waddle, Tet. So when I look at the first question here, this first grouping of questions, I think that Jaylen Waddle is an interesting play this week for me. Particularly if you believe that Miami is going to have to keep pace. So they are in a matchup that is over the last 4 weeks. Buffalo is a team that you can pass on. They're allowing around 11.
All year, not just the last 4 weeks.
Right. But I'm just saying over the last 4 weeks, they're a team that has allowed around 173 yards to pass catchers. When you take that out to the whole season, they're allowing around 141 reception yards to wide receivers. And I think that Waddle is an incredible play in that circumstance because he's a pass catcher, he's healthy, and the weather has not yet gotten bad. And I think that he's going to be a great play. Now, you know that I will always champion this season, at least, Michael Pittman. He's having an incredible year. Oh, yeah. And when I look at it and I say, well, Michael Pittman might draw the best coverage for Atlanta. Atlanta has not been allowing as many receptions to wide receivers over the course of the last, season, but over the course of the last 4 weeks, especially. And the yardage total isn't as high. And we see the emergence of Alec Pierce. I think you're comfortable enough benching a guy like Michael Pittman this week because the matchup is better for Jaylen Waddle. Now, Tet wouldn't even be into that discussion, Jason. No. Now, starting two in the flex, one of those wide receivers, Rico, Jaylen Warren, Kamara, or DJ Moore. DJ Moore is dealing with some injuries, so I'd keep my eye on what that injury is. I don't bench Rico Dowdle right now, guys. It feels like Rico, and I don't want to speak it into existence, but it feels like he's matchup proof in a way. They even when they're down, they use Rico Dowdle. So I think you have to play Rico Dowdle by default, even in matchups that are a little bit poor because he's getting the majority of the volume. Now, Jaylen Warren to me is interesting. Jaylen Warren, the Chargers are not allowing a lot of rushing attempts on the year over the last 4 games, around 16 total rushing attempts. And now that's game script dependent as well. But they've been allowing a tad bit more targets, about 6 targets a game. You pair that up with they're allowing around 1 touchdown or more a game to running backs. That makes the Jaylen Warren play very, very, very interesting, especially if the Steelers can control the time of possession. So for me, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think Waddle, Rico, and Jaylen Warren are the better plays out of this grouping of players. Now, if DJ Moore is healthy, you can begin a discussion about maybe wanting to start DJ Moore because he did have a great game last week. But I think I'm landing on the 2 running backs and Jaylen Waddle.
Yep.
Let's see here. And we see all your DDs, guys. If you just came into the chat, we're Local Football Flavor. We answer every question here, so feel free to sit back, relax, enjoy. If you can't sit back and relax and you want to catch us on replay, please feel free to do so. We will answer all questions. So before we get to this Revan question here, let's dive into some of those deep dives, Joe. Jesse here sent out, which defense would you guys rather start this week between the Panthers and the Bills? I like both, but I side with the Bills. Now, the Panthers is a heads-up play just because of the matchup that they're in. They're facing off against New Orleans. And New Orleans just traded away one of their biggest playmakers. They do not use their playmaker that's in the backfield. And so by association, this is going to be a game that's probably going to be very low scoring. You could see a Packers-like score to this game, 15-13, something like that. So if you're looking for just keeping the score low, I think the Panthers are a very viable defense. If you're looking for something different, possibly a team that's ready to make mistakes, you could land on the Bills. The Bills against Miami, you can definitely see Tua throwing 2 interceptions in this game. The only problem is that it is very much more likely that Miami Dolphins are able to put up points against the Buffalo Bills defense. So if points matter, and if you get a large amount of negative points for being over, say, 18 total points given up, then you're probably going to land on the Carolina Panthers. Now, all that said, there's a reason why both of these defenses are interesting enough, right? Is that the Bills are slated in DraftKings to get around like 7-ish points. The Carolina Panthers, a little bit less than that. And you could say that, well, maybe the Saints are going to be able to get shook. And since the Carolina Panthers have never seen shook, maybe the game script, maybe there's a little bit more points scored there. But it's tricky when you have a young quarterback like that, and then you have Tua who can absolutely make mistakes, and they've seen Tua plenty of times, and they know what makes Tua tick. That kind of framework to like the whole discussion changes the viewpoint that some people.
So basically, Bob, you're presenting the argument for the Bills as Miami is such a train wreck, they're going to spill some gold in Buffalo, versus the team that actually has been outscoring the Bills all year long.
Yes, yeah. So, like, I'm just saying, historically speaking, when you look at Tua and you look at games that he's played against Buffalo, last year, Thursday night in September, he threw for 3 interceptions. Okay?
Yeah, I remember that one.
In 2023, and again, these are different Bills defenses, so you can't really knock it too hard here, is then prior to that in 2023, the last time he played the Bills, he went for 2 interceptions, and the time before that, it was 1 interception. So they have intercepted Tua every single time they've played Tua. And so if interceptions can't be predicted, we can't say without a shadow of a doubt that this quarterback is going to throw for 2 interceptions.
That's true.
But what we do know is that in a rivalry games, divisional rivalry games, defenses play differently, offenses play differently, and we know that Jaylen Waddle is going to, in a way, Jaylen Waddle and Malik Washington and Etienne are going to be hyper-targeted in these games. So they're going to put their best defenders against those players, and they're going to see what happens. Now, Tua could absolutely go for like 300 yards and 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and that's an okay game for Tua. But also that's points on the board for Miami. So that's why I'm saying if points on the board matter, and they're
points
not
on the board are normally the largest indicator of what the defense does. And I'm going to go with Carolina, aside from the fact they've been the better one all year. They're also at home.
That's fair.
And that home field advantage matters
home
a lot.
Home defenses matter. But Jesse, those are the 2 arguments that you can make for Buffalo or Panthers. And I think that if you're looking for some interceptions, the Bills will absolutely get after Tua. But if you're looking for a low scoring game, yeah, like I told you in the early look ahead on Monday, that I think that it's very, very, very reasonable to play the Carolina Panthers this week. Just looking at their stats in general here, Joe, I want to pull up defensive interceptions this year for the NFL before we go to the next deep dive here. And the Carolina Panthers are sitting at interceptions. The Carolina Panthers have gotten 7 interceptions on the year. So there's a reason to believe that Carolina Panthers are a great start this week. And it's
I think they're the better start. The home field advantage against a rookie is a big deal.
If James Cook is out this week, which backup is the best play? I hope that James Cook isn't out this week. I believe from what I looked at in the news earlier today is that he was back at practice. So let's look that up.
Yeah, it looks like he's playing, dude.
Before we go anywhere else. But even if he wasn't, I think that when we look at the two players on the team and you see the difference between these two players, Ray Davis should be slotted in as the next one up. However, when you look at just in general what's been going on with Ty Johnson, they're using Ty Johnson a bit differently than Ray Davis would be used. I think what happens, though, is that Ray Davis is your immediate replacement for James Cook, and Ty Johnson strictly stays in that third down capacity, maybe plays a little bit more overall, right? But when I look at James Cook is most likely playing. So I don't want to spend a lot. I know this is a deep dive, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. But when I look at this from a statistical standpoint, and when you think of next guy up in a row, it's absolutely Ray Davis to me. Even though Ty Johnson statistically is better on the year, Ray Davis is going to take over that role from James Cook.
But it's also kind of muted question because James Cook's playing.
But the other thing is, though, Joe, when we look at the running backs in general for Buffalo, Josh Allen is always the threat to get rushing touchdowns as well, and that takes away from all three of those running backs. So even if James Cook wasn't playing, I wouldn't be playing either of those.
No, because without Cook, he runs a whole lot more.
But if I were to pick up one, it would be Ray Davis, and I don't think Ty would be a guy that I would pick up, CC. Revin, first stream I've caught this season. We're glad to have you here. 5-3, 10-man. Team is stacked. May, CMC, Genty, St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, McBride, Ladd, AJ Brown. Love this. Devonta Smith, Benson, Sharps. I wish I had this team. Want to trade for wide receiver depth or a stud. Any thoughts on the team? So if it were me, actually, I'm going to frame this as if it were Joe. If it were Joe, he would continue to tell you that you can trade CMC.
Or Genty.
I think that I would trade Ashton Genty. Now, when I look at what I could get, the problem is that you're loaded at wide receiver and you don't need depth. You have
it already.
So in my personal opinion, when I look at this team and I see, what you got going on, this team already is solid. And I wouldn't be looking at wide receiver depth. I'd be looking at a running back because I don't believe in Ashton Genty right now.
I don't either.
So when I look at what you could give, I think Devonta Smith and Ladd.
I'd give AJ Brown and Genty to upgrade to running back position. That's
exactly what I was going to say. I would pair one of those Eagles wide receivers up, whichever one you think doesn't project well moving forward, and
AJ Brown,
and take Genty and AJ Brown, or Genty and Devonta Smith, and AJ Brown's the name. Devonta Smith's the production. So people are going to see through that, and they're going to offer.
Genty's also a little bit of a name.
Let them pick. So Genty plus one of those two wide receivers is what I would do to get into a running back. So again, everybody that's just joining the chat,
we trying to get into that. Give them back
all questions here. I want to get back to this question though.
Bob, what back you want to get for Genty and Brown?
I want to get Josh Jacobs. I want to get Javonte Williams. I want to get something along those lines. So I'm not saying trade Genty and AJ Brown straight into Javonte Williams, but I'm saying that if in terms of running backs that I want James Cook, even though his schedule looks a little bit harder on the back end of the year. Where James Cook is really going to get you those points is if he gets those rushing touchdowns from Josh Allen in the red zone. What I'm looking at Derrick Henry. I'm looking at Javonte Williams. I'm looking at James Cook. I'm looking at Kyron, and I'm still open the door. Again, guys like Judkins. I'm not trading a Genty straight into Judkins, but if I could get Judkins and a wide receiver back and not have to give up one of the wide receivers that I got, that's great for me. You can buy Jahmyr Gibbs low right now. He had a shitty game this past week. I don't know what the hell they're doing with Jahmyr Gibbs, but Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be relevant. You can certainly see if you can buy low on him. I wouldn't call it a buy low, but again, you can certainly see if you can buy him. And Josh Jacobs, like I said, Josh Jacobs has a great schedule for players in terms of running backs, but also seeing that they just lost Tucker Kraft, you can't tell me that they're not going to lean more on Josh Jacobs. Okay. So Genty plus one of those wide receivers can absolutely move you into Josh Jacobs, even Genty straight up for Jacobs. And maybe you can throw in something else on your back end. Could definitely move you into Josh Jacobs. You might be able to pry Javonte Williams out from people's hands because, again, with that defense maybe modestly improving, you get more good opportunities from a guy like Javonte Williams. So those are the guys that I'm targeting. If I want a running back right now, you have the player capital to not give up CMC and go after running back. I know you said you wanted a wide receiver, but you don't need one. And if you trade away A.J. Brown, you can absolutely ask for a wide receiver back if you want to with a Genty A.J. Brown for Jacobs and a lower wide receiver that people might declare as lower, like Wan'Dale Robinson, right? If the owner has Jacobs and Wan'Dale Robinson, hey, Genty and A.J. Brown, get it done. All right, cool. Let's do it, right?
I love the little inflection you put at the end of get it done.
What did you say?
I said, I love your inflection you throw at the end of get it done. It's great.
Yeah, what will it take? So, Ryan, that's kind of what I would think about. And I think Joe is in a similar mode in terms of running backs. Yeah. And like Judkins is such an interesting play for me. And even if you want like Derrick Henry, Devin Achane, Derrick Henry definitely has better days ahead. So hop on that bus sooner rather than later, in my opinion. And then let's touch this. Let's touch these two deep dives from CC and Jason and KJ. We'll get to your third one here, and then we'll get back into the chat. So if you're just leaving a comment or question in the chat, we do answer every question here. Sit tight, lay back, relax, listen in. If you can't, watch us on replay.
I'm actually going to rank all three of these between Tyler Warren of the Colts, Fannin of Cleveland, and Brock of the Raiders, based upon the floor and the ceiling, giving you the same order. Brock, Warren, and Fannin. Brock is the entire offense, and there's no way about that. And I cannot trust Cleveland's quarterback situation to adequately produce for Fannin. So he's an easy zero floor potential, low ceiling guy. Warren is just the middle of the road. I think he's the most consistent of them. He's probably the one I'd rather start. But to rank your floor and upside, I'm going Brock, Warren, Fannin.
Okay, so Fannin was put on the injury report today. He didn't practice with a hamstring injury. So I think just by being added on a Thursday is never a good thing.
Never good.
Highly unlikely to play at this point in time. I'd be rolling out David Njoku over him if I had the two of them. So I think out of this discussion, Fannin is out of the discussion for me. Now, as it goes to the other players there, I do think that Brock Bowers is the guy that you're starting. And here's why. When you look at what the Falcons have been doing over the last several weeks, and you're seeing matchups. So taking the tight ends that have played against the Falcons over the last 4 weeks, Dalton Kincaid, your Julian Hill, Darren Waller kind of combination for Miami, which I'm not even including that into this discussion. And then your Jake Tongas, George Kittle kind of discussion as well for San Francisco, more so Tongas, Luke Farrell, and whatnot. Their stats have said that over the last couple of weeks, they've played the tight ends fairly well. But because they haven't really played any good tight ends, those metrics are kind of thrown off. The only good tight ends that they've really played in the last several weeks has been Dalton Kincaid, and then again with Hunter Henry. And the fact of the matter is that in this game, Drake May did not throw the ball a decent amount to Hunter Henry. He got 4 receptions, and it was a good game for Hunter Henry. And I think that Tyler Warren's, that purview in that game, they're probably going to end up, similarly, against the Falcons, is probably going to end up with 4 to 6 receptions, 60 yards minimum. Okay. So you're looking at 10 points minimum from a guy like Tyler Warren, I think, this week. When you look at Brock Bowers most likely is in that 10 targets. Even though Denver has played, like I said earlier in the show, Denver has played tight ends better again, but the types of tight ends they played are different. You look at, and he's the offense. So Denver is going to make sure they try to stop him. But even in a bad game from Brock Bowers, you are probably still getting what the floor of Tyler Warren is. And when you look at ceiling potential, and you look at the ways that the Colts can beat you, they can beat you in so many ways.
So many ways.
But the Raiders can't. The Raiders cannot beat you in so many ways. They have two ways.
Chuck and pray, baby.
They have 2 ways. And Brock Bowers is going to be the alpha and the omega, I believe, for this wide receiver room, tight end room this week. So when I look at this from a structural standpoint, Brock Bowers has the highest ceiling. They both, Brock Bowers and Tyler Warren, have the same floor to me. So if you're looking for the ceiling, which I am in this matchup, I am looking at Brock Bowers and saying that, hey, Brock Bowers is in for a game that should be better, not better than last week, but should be better than some tight ends have fared against Denver. Again, Denver's a team that has been allowing on average 4 receptions to tight ends over the last 4 games with 53 yards. If that's your floor for Brock Bowers, I'm taking it. And I'm going for the ceiling there. And I think that you can't underestimate Brock Bowers any more than maybe some people were doing. So let's get in. Jason, we're going to hold off on your deep dive. We're going to clear in some of these quick hitters because we do have to catch up to the quick hits here, guys.
Yeah, we do.
Jason, we answered this question. Let me go down. I believe the next quick hit here was Revin, right? Joe, yeah. So Revin, looking to send offers to Jacobs. Love it. His owner could use wide receiver help, but would need a running back in return also. We saw the team. We just talked about Jacobs. Thinking about Genty and Lad Smith for Jacobs. Exactly. We didn't look far ahead down into these questions, but that's exactly what we're talking about earlier. So, yeah, if I can move Genty and A.J. Brown or Genty and Smith or maybe even Genty and Lad to get Jacobs, sure. Absolutely 100% do that. I am behind that. Should I play Nix tonight or play Darnold on Sunday full PPR? So, KJ, with a guy like Nix, we explained to you earlier how the Raiders could win that game. Bo Nix is a fine play this week. Sam Darnold is a play that could be a little bit Sam Darnold's an interesting play to me because Arizona is allowing a lot of pass attempts to quarterbacks and a lot of completions. And again, that's where Sam Darnold does shine. He needs to get a lot of pass attempts and completions in order to get a boatload of yards. That is what you need to understand about him. As it goes for Bo Nix, Bo Nix can beat you in a couple of different ways. And the Raiders are allowing a good amount of completions on the year, but not any more than, the Cardinals. Now, if you look over the last 4 games, and this accounts for, player injuries, et cetera, Bo Nix then has a little bit of an edge here on Sam Darnold because over the last 4 weeks, the Raiders have been allowing slightly more pass completions than the Cardinals. So I think for me, I'd land on Bo Nix tonight, knowing that, they might have to come back and win this game if the Raiders get out to an early lead, if that's at all possible. I'm just speaking things, that could happen here because we did say
speaking these into existence for yourself.
No, we did say that the Broncos are a cold starting team. So I think that I'm on Bo Nix tonight. And Joe, I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that he's a comfortable start this week.
I would still go Darnold over him.
That's fair.
I'm not as comfortable with him as you are.
KJ, starting Devontae Adams as my wide receiver 1, CD's on the bye. I picked up Slayton and Christian Watson off waivers this week. Pop Douglas is still on waivers. Can pivot off one of them if need be. Which 2 should I start? I think you have to start Darius Slayton. The matchup is too good. We know that the Bears cannot stop anybody in the air. And Jackson Dart is a good enough quarterback passing that he could absolutely find ways to beat the Chicago defense. So I think you do start Darius Slayton. Now, I said on Monday that Christian Watson was an intriguing option, but not a guy that I would immediately start this week, especially, even considering the depleted wide receiver room that the Packers are dealing with. Now, if we don't get good news of Golden and whatnot, I think that he's interesting enough, but the usage for Pop Douglas is very intriguing to me. He could throw you under the bus this week and get you like a 3. But he's getting some usage over the last several weeks, and this Tampa Bay game is going to be competitive. And Tampa Bay offers a lot of receptions to wide receivers in general. And the fact of the matter is that what we know about the Patriots is they distribute the ball pretty evenly. And Kayshon Boutte might be out this game. So for me, I'm on Darius Slayton and Pop Douglas, and Christian Watson can go back to the waivers, personally. Scorpion can't decide between Tet or Devonta Smith. It's Devonta Smith. It's Devonta Smith. Now, all things being the same, right, is that when you consider target share, they both have.
Scorpion, you're right. It is going to be Rico's show. You're 100% right about that part.
And they both get the same amount of target share for the team. But what I worry about is how much Bryce Young's actually going to be passing the ball versus how much Jalen Hurts can pass the ball if he wants to. And Jalen Hurts passing the ball if he wants to, I'd rather be connected to that than Bryce Young at this point in time. So even though it's a tougher matchup, I'm on Devonta Smith because of the quarterback. Would you drop Spears for Swift if I have Kyle Monangai? I think it's fair to drop Tajay Spears for DeAndre Swift if somebody put him on your waiver wire. Here's the thing. The matchup this week is great for both Swift and Monangai. If both are healthy, I kind of am interested in playing one or the other, and you could get me to be interested in Swift, especially for touchdown upside, because Monangai did not get that touchdown last week. So I'm definitely interested in Swift, and I would drop Tajay Spears for him. Now I have BTJ and Travis Hunter and Jacoby Myers all on one team. Quincy, sucks. It sucks. This is what I was hoping when we were talking about Jacoby Myers earlier in the show, Joe. This is what I this was the other reason why I hoped this didn't happen, because I knew Quincy had all 3 of these guys. Now to have 3 Jaguars wide receivers, it's just bad. It doesn't feel great. Better tight end streaming options start this week. I'm on Likely. There are many metrics to point you in Likely's direction, but I think the overall metric that I want to look at just in the past couple of games is the fact that, again, Lamar is back. Minnesota hasn't been able to stop tight ends over the last 2 weeks. And he loves passing to tight ends in the red zone. Isaiah Likely is the guy that I'm on. And even though Cade Otton is, in a good enough matchup right now, I think that you have to lean a little bit on Isaiah Likely and what he can do. He might not get the touchdown, but it's very possible that he can get 4 to 5 receptions and 80 plus yards. And that's going to be a great game for a tight end. And I don't think Otton has that in him this week. Loveland or Juwan Johnson this week. Komet was full practice today. I know Komet was full practice today. And I am kind of curious how that's going to shake out in general. Juwan Johnson's going to get targeted. They said that Deshaun Vele is going to get a bunch of targets as well over the next several weeks as they find out what this offensive identity can be without Rashid Shaheed. But when you look at what the Carolina Panthers have given up over the last couple of weeks, and again, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave were accounted for in these stats, even though Tucker Kraft got injured. They're allowing like 4 receptions. And I think that Juwan Johnson's role in this offense dictates that he's probably going to get more than 4 receptions. So I'm putting him around 6 to 7 receptions in this game. And if you think that Loveland will get more than 6 or 7 receptions in this game, then I think that Loveland's the better start because he's in the better matchup, statistically speaking. But again, I would worry about that Cole Kmet. So I'm on Juwan Johnson, but if you can see that Loveland has a pathway to 7 receptions or 6 receptions, I think you should start Loveland. But I am on Juwan because I think he's going to have to get 6 or 7 for the Saints to be competitive in this game. How do you feel about that, Joe?
I can't go with Loveland. I think Loveland is the pure start panic move because he did so much last week.
So, Quincy, if I can trade Kyle Monangai and Sutton for HN, yeah, I'm 1,000% doing that. Joe will give you all the reasons why you wouldn't want to do that because Miami falls off in the winter when it gets cold. But again, the cold games are not with Miami so much this year. And Tua is currently healthy. When Tua is currently healthy, HN is better. And we know with Tyreek Hill down and Malik Washington kind of ascending in this offense a little bit, HN still a prominent role. Yes, I would do this 1,000% because, again, Joe doesn't like the Bears in the winter. He also doesn't like Miami in the winter. And we know that Sutton's target share is interesting. I think that in a non-split backfield, you got to go HN. Yes, I do this 100% of the time. Maybe you want to throw in one of those Jaguars wide receivers as well, you know. Quincy also had BTJ and Myers roster, dropped Myers for Ray Davis and had to gamble. Gives my team more flexibility to make moves on the waiver wire. And that's something you should always think about too. When these moves happen, you know, if you were holding Shaheed, if you had Shaheed Cup as well, you got to figure out which one of those that you think is going to have more targets over the long term of the season. Jason, I tried to get Vidal, but couldn't get him. It's official. My team, My team is QB Johnson, Barkley, running back 2, Kyron, Chase, London. As your wide receivers. Love that. I tried. And then Henry, Sutton as your first flex and Javonte as another flex. I absolutely love that.
That's a good team,
deal,
dude.
That deal is phenomenal. I'm a big fan, and you were able to put Woody on your bench here with Tracy on your bench. If Terry and Hampton come back for the playoffs, I think this team is absolutely solid, Jason. I think that you're in a really good place. I'm really happy you were able to get that deal done. Revin, assuming I don't make any trades, pick 2 of these wide receivers this week. Wilson, Ladd, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown. So when I look at this, when I look at who I start here, like I said, I think Devonta Smith is a very interesting start.
I think it's a very good start too.
I love Ladd this week. Just because, again, like I said, the Steelers are kind of an enigma for sometimes how they want to play certain players. But when I look at it over the last 2 games, they're getting absolutely torched by wide receivers. But they're
also getting pass rushes too. It's making no sense.
Over the last 4 games, they're getting absolutely torched. And in the course of the season, they're getting absolutely torched. So
let's put it this way. There's no one in the Steelers secondary that can cover Ladd. Period. The only way that Ladd gets slowed down
even though Kyle Duggar is there, Kyle Duggar doesn't affect Ladd. Kyle Duggar would affect QJ. Kyle Duggar would affect.
He's covered by Slay, and Ladd's going to rip him apart.
For me,
I would go to Devontae Smith and Ladd.
For me, it's Ladd and Devonta Smith. Like I said, I think that Wilson is an interesting play, but it's very much quarterback dependent. If I'm finding out that Tyrod Taylor is starting, I like Garrett Wilson slightly more than Devonta Smith. But if I'm finding that Justin Fields is starting again, it's Ladd and Devonta Smith for me. No doubt. And the only reason why Devonta Smith over A.J. Brown is I am concerned about that hamstring injury. It seems to be bothering him more and more over the last 2 years.
Because Devontae Smith's jumped A.J. Brown. He's the better receiver.
Would you trade Nico for Igbuka and Rico or for Igbuka and Kyron? Or would you keep Nico? My running backs are Hall, Monty, White, and Pacheco. Joe tells you no. I think it's fine. There's many
Collins,
reasons.
Dude. Collins going to get so super fed.
There's so many reasons to like Nico Collins, and that's without a shadow of a doubt that there are so many reasons to like Nico Collins. But there's also a lot of reasons to like Rico Dowdle. And the way that I look at your room is that I'm not confident with Hall over the next couple of weeks. White's going to lose his job when Bucky comes back, maybe week 12. Then you're left with Monty and Hunt for your fantasy playoff surge. I would rather have the extra running back knowing that I'm not confident starting Breece Hall on a daily basis. Even though I'm super confident in Nico, I want to know that Igbuka is healthy, and I'm not sure Igbuka is fully healthy yet, but we'll see this week. Buying one of those running backs, I think, is really smart. When you look at Rico, they're running up Saints, Falcons, Niners, Rams, Saints, Bucks, Seahawks. Those are all going to be games that Rico Dowdle is going to be heavily involved in, assuming that he continues to keep the starting job. And then when you look at the Rams, you're facing Seattle, Buccaneers, Panthers, obviously, Cardinals, Lions, Seahawks, Falcons. Then those are going to be hyper competitive games where Kyren Williams is going to be able to get into the red zone and potentially get 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns. Dealer's choice on which trade you want to take, which one you perform more, which running back you perform more. But I think you do need a running back for your playoff push. And not knowing your other wide receivers here, I do think that getting Igbokwe back, I think a trade like this makes a lot of sense. You are losing out on that kind of weekly upside that Nico could provide in terms of volume, but it makes a lot of sense because you're getting a lot of volume back. And I think that considering that, I would do either one of them. It just depends on which one schedule you like more upcoming. And Joe says he'd keep Nico. Do I start Josh Downs or Parker Washington? Also, I have Bucky, but since he's out and forced to start Charbonnet or Woody Marks, other running back starters are Achane. So Woody Marks is the guy I'd start for you out of those 2 running backs. And the reason I'd start Woody is the fact that, Chubb's already dealing with an injury. Yes, they brought in other running backs to run at the goal line. I don't like that they did that. Color me red for that one. I don't really like that. But what we see is that the Jags are giving about 18 rushing attempts to running backs. Not a lot of yards, but they're giving up a decent amount of reception yards. We know that Woody can catch the ball. So Woody's the play for me out of those 2 running backs. Then when it comes to the wide receiver room, again, like I said, the Parker Washington is going to play in the slot. And so when you think about, is that going to be a good matchup for him against Houston? Maybe, maybe not. It's going to be tough to say. I don't really want to start him. And then looking at Josh Downs' matchup, again, the Falcons are such an enigma of a defense at times. They're not allowing a lot of receptions to wide receivers on the season, and that worries me because Josh Downs is not on the field as much. And if they're limiting receptions, that's a problem. So I think because of the limited amount of receptions and because they're less than Parker Washington, I think you go Parker Washington, but I do think that Josh Downs is an interesting play this week. I'm just nervous about his total snap share and the fact that Atlanta has kept wide receivers under wraps. That worries me over the course in this week. So I think I'd land on Parker Washington, but I could see myself flip-flopping until Sunday realistically because Josh Downs does have a good chance to get a touchdown. But again, Parker Washington is going to be involved. So it's Parker Washington and Woody Marks for me. Joe, how about you?
I'm not on the Parker Washington bus. Let's just start with that.
I am because the corners
on the Josh Downs bus.
I get it.
Much more on the Josh Downs bus. So that's where I would be going with that.
I get it. Steve, I have Pickens and Worthy, but they are on bye, so I'm starting Diggs and Franklin for my wide receivers. I think that's fine. I think that's good. Gabriel, welcome. My full team is flex or start quarterback Mahomes, Bucky, Hampton, Etienne, Kamara, JCM, Monungai, CD, Rome, AJ Brown, Tet at the wide receivers, tight ends, Ferguson. I need to drop a running back for a tight end. Now, this is going to be controversial. Also, someone just dropped Rachaad White, and I'd love to pick him up. That means I'd have to drop 2. This is going to sound controversial. Don't put me up on anything right now. This is going to sound very controversial, Joe. I'm dropping Kamara, and I'm dropping Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I'm dropping them both to pick up a tight end this week.
What?
Honestly, it's going to sound ridiculous. But Kamara has not been getting the usage he needs to be even close to being relevant for your team. He is offering 0 trade assets. Nobody believes in him. And if I wanted Rachaad White for the week because Bucky and Hampton are hurt, ETN, and do you think Kamara is a good play this week, Joe? Do you think JCM is a good play this week? No.
All right, you sort of put it like that.
No. And yeah, you're going to lose out on potential value for Kamara and JCM. But the other thing too, Gabriel, is what you need to think about is, White's not in a great matchup either. White isn't in a great matchup either. So for me, the first one that I would drop out of those 2 guys is probably still Kamara. because I don't see them changing what they've been doing on their offense over the last several weeks of the season. He's been absolutely irrelevant from a fantasy football perspective. No matter what the projections are saying, he's been irrelevant. Now, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, on the other hand, with Jayden Daniels out long-term, there's no reason that you should think that Washington's going to have a lead in any game, right? So if you think Washington's going to have a lead in any game, then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's perfectly fine. But without a lead, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's also useless because when they're losing, they put in Chris Rodriguez. So when I see that from that perspective, I'm perfectly fine dropping both of those guys. And it sucks because, like, yeah, you know, they have opportunities to be good. But yeah, honestly, I wouldn't even be mad about it. Even if they popped off, I wouldn't even be mad about it because, you know, my tight end, I want to win. If you want White, get White. I don't think he's going to have a good game this week. That's up to you. If you'd like to drop Kamara or JCM, that's fair. And you only want to drop one of them. You know, Kamara is probably the guy that I would drop because he didn't get moved at the deadline. Joe, how do you feel about that? I know that's controversial, but like, it's not a hot take. It's just what we see based on stats.
This is White's last hurrah. Actually, he is going to have a good week with Bucky out. This is his last go around. I'm okay with going in White. But I don't know if I want to go on my way to do any of those other cuts that you talked about.
But he needs a tight end. He doesn't have one this week.
He does need a tight
end. He has to drop
I mean, you got to do the first one, but
my question is, do you have IR positions and how many do you have? Because with Bucky and Hampton, you should be able to put them on IR if something happens. So Gabriel, get back.
Yeah, exactly. And there should be someone worth cutting sitting around.
And honestly, yeah, you picked up Goff this week as well. And that's fair. He's probably going to have a really good game against Washington this week. So I think that that's fair to go and pick up Goff. And it sucks because now you have to carry two quarterbacks to be on your team. Cece, and let us know what you think about that, Gabriel, because a lot of people have different opinions about Kamara and JCM, but I think the other guys are worth keeping on your team. The other one that you could drop is Hampton. If you don't have the IR spot and you'd rather use it with Bucky, Hampton's window opens week 12, but they're probably not going to open it until later, which means he could be absolutely irrelevant for you unless you are absolutely pushing into the playoffs. So that's the other way to approach that too. Picked up Dart last week to cover Hurts's bye. Am I crazy to keep him in the lineup this week? I feel like benching Hurts is tempting the fantasy gods. It is tempting the fantasy gods, and some people would say it's too cute, but Jackson Dart is the guy that is Jalen Hurts. He's Jalen Hurts light, Joe.
You don't bench Hurts. Yeah, you don't put in the light version of the good stuff. You don't.
But you do in a matchup that dictates that it's a better matchup. They're going against Chicago, who just let 40-year-old Joe Flacco throw for 400 freaking yards.
That game's going to lead the league in interceptions. 12 interceptions in that game. All by Jackson. Actually, correction.
That's fine, Joe. But when you go in and you look at Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts, and he's going to have a competitive game against Green Bay. But here's what worries me about that Green Bay game. And I just want to speak this out there is without Tucker Kraft and them having to use Luke Musgrave, there's a very real possibility that the Packers just run the ball 30 times. And Jordan Love passes the ball 18 to 22 times in that game to keep the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands. There's no way they're going to be able to keep Chicago or New York is going to be able to keep either of those quarterbacks off the field. That's not how they play defense.
That's true.
So it sounds too big brain to do.
Still going Hurts, though.
It's too.
I hear your argument. I'm still going Hurts.
It sounds too big brain to do, but the stats absolutely say that Dart is the better play than Jalen Hurts. And ultimately, the choice is up to you. But I do think the game script would say that Dart is going to have more opportunities than Jalen Hurts because they're going to want to sit on the ball, and the Packers sit on the ball. B-Rons, flex PPR, Kincaid or Trey Tucker? I could see a framework where Trey Tucker would be a guy that I want to start this week. We started off the episode talking a little bit about Trey Tucker. The other thing to keep in mind is Dalton Kincaid's in an incredible matchup. He's gotten some usage over the last several weeks that makes you a little bit more excited to start Dalton Kincaid. Usually, like I said, I don't like to start tight ends in the flex. because they're just limited on targets. Last couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 receptions, and 6 receptions. Prior to that injury, he had 6 receptions. So you're looking at a ceiling of 6 targets, 6 receptions. If you think that can outperform Trey Tucker, then you start Kincaid. For me, I think I still start Tucker over Kincaid, even though Kincaid has the better matchup. Knicks or Stafford this week, Joe. Now that is interesting. What are your thoughts?
Stafford. I don't think Knicks is going to have a great game. I think I just don't.
And I like Knicks this week, Jesse. But
I see the Raiders somehow blowing them out tonight. Like, I see something stupid.
I do like Knicks tonight, but I do also
points, by the way. Just full disclosure.
I do also like Stafford. And the last time the Niners saw Stafford, he threw for 3 touchdowns and almost 400 yards. So I think I'd go Stafford because I think the ceiling is higher for Stafford than Knicks this week. Scorpion. And again, guys, if you're just joining, feel free to leave a comment or question in the chat. We are our local football flavor. We do answer every comment and question. If you don't hear a question or comment answered right away, feel free to sit around, watch us. If you want to watch us on replay, feel free to do that as well. Scorpion, rest of the season outlook on Brees. Tough being the Jets and the possible tank this season, but Brees' rookie contract ends, and he's going to sign a new contract this offseason, so shouldn't he be trying to ball out? And this is what I said about Brees earlier when we were talking about him as part of the deep dive as well. Brees Hall absolutely could be used, but there is no reason why the Jets would want to show anybody that he's actually good, because they didn't want to trade him, and now they're going to give him up. There's no reason for them to want to play Brees Hall. They're absolutely tanked out unless they start winning games.
You play him just to get the tread off his tires and keep the tread on your other tires. That's how you do it.
That's the other way to view it. So Isaiah Davis could absolutely pull up and get more usage. But the problem is that depending on the quarterback situation, they're going to be, and they lost those 2 pieces on defense. How many rushing attempts do you think the Jets will have over the next several weeks of the season? Because he's not going to be throwing touchdowns every game. And in the first half of that game against the Bengals, he wasn't accumulating any stats, and then he blew up in the second half because the game started to be a little bit tighter. Without a defense, you can't tell me that they're going to be holding on to the ball as much as they should. And the only way that you think that that's going to happen is if you think that the Jets are going to win the time of possession against teams, and that's not going to happen. So like Brees Hall probably going to have a stable-ish floor somewhere in that like 10 to 12 market every single week, in that kind of similar like Chase Brown category. But those ceiling games are going to be few and far between. We saw his ceiling game prior to the bye week. And I don't see a reason for him to ball out unless the coaching staff says, yeah, let's just wear the tread off these tires like Joseph. So that is something to be considered. Hey, Michael, what's happening? Today's been good. It's a little cold. It's a little cold outside. Monangai or Monty? It's Monty. Monangai is going to be back to splitting the carries. And again, it's a great matchup. Don't get me wrong. It's the number 1 matchup on the slate for running backs. Okay. So rolling into Monangai makes a lot of sense. He is practicing this week. So is Swift. So looking at the Giants, they offer around 20 rushing attempts per game over the course of the season. Over the last 4 games, it's around 22 rushing attempts per game. So if you get a 60-40 split, you can absolutely see that being somewhere in that 12-7 category. Then in terms of targets, you're looking at around 4 to split, or around 6 to split between the 2 of them. So if you're rolling into Monangai, just know that with a 60-40 split, which way is that 60-40 split going to go? And he got 175 because of the usage rate. But Monty, on the other hand, is, I think, locked and loaded for a touchdown this week. Yeah, the matchup isn't as good, but it's the same amount of opportunities, like the same amount of rush attempts. And, the Commanders, they're not laying up as many touchdowns, but they suck. And they just lost Jayden Daniels. So Dan Campbell's going to want to put it to the Commanders, and I think Monty's a full go this week, and I think Joe would agree.
Yep.
Would you guys drop Fannin for likely because of that hamstring injury? Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Fannin with a hamstring injury is useless to you because you're not going to want to keep him on the bench. And if Likely is out there, I'd rather have Likely, and I'd rather play Likely over Fannin. Breaking news, Antonio Brown has been picked up by the U.S. Marshals and extradited to New Jersey. He's wanted for attempted murder. What? No way.
I wish I could say it surprised me, but it clearly doesn't.
He's in custody 4 months after allegedly shooting into oh my God. He was extradited from Dubai. This is some Batman shit, man. If you would have told me like before he got rocked, who was the linebacker that rocked him on Cincinnati? Who was that guy? Perfect. If straight up Sun Devil right there. But if you look at and say, well, if this would have happened, oh my God, this is nuts. That's some Batman shit. I love it. Start one between Hall, Monangai, and Sampson. So for you, Jesse, you heard everything we had to say about Monangai. You heard everything I had to say about Breece Hall. Cleveland's a much better defense. And I think for that matter, yeah, you're losing out on a little bit of that upside that Hall does provide. But I think for you that I would start, I would think about starting Monangai over Hall. It's close. It's really close because it's real close. And I don't think I could start Sampson with Judkins most likely playing this week. So probably on Monangai, Joe. Probably.
You love Monangai so much.
What do you think? Who are you on? You hate Hall. You hate Cleveland. So you have to be on Monangai as well. But again, I think that
because Judkins is playing. I do.
I think that Monangai is limited, but it's a better matchup. I think there's going to be more scoring in the Chicago game than in the Jets-Browns game. That's what I do think.
Yeah.
Nino might have brought this up last live, but is this giving up too much? Give up Etienne, Igbuka, and Sutton, and get back Puka and Christian Watson. Nino, if I could do that and I could get Puka on my team and my running backs are JT and Kyron, I'm doing that all day, every day. If I can start Jamar and Puka and then JT and Kyron for the playoff push, and the least defensible option that I have on the back end is Keenan and DJ Moore, yes, 1,000%. This is what you do with your depth right now, guys. If you are in the playoff hunt and you have this amount of depth and your team would not suffer from losing out on a specific player, you're losing out on 2 starting wide receivers in Sutton and Igbuka, but you aren't using ETN. But here's the thing to watch out for, Nino, is JT's bye is coming up. So you have to be really confident in Pollard and Spears in that week, or it's not going to matter to you, and you're doing really well already, and it's not going to matter. So if that week 11 bye doesn't matter to you, that's fine. Also, your week 10 bye with Jamar right now, you'd be starting Puka, Igbuka, and Keenan Allen, perceivably, and watch those buys because you might, if you can sacrifice this week and next week, and you're not going to be in poor shape by doing so, then yes, I'd absolutely go after Puka. And I think Joe would agree with that. I have Chenty going tonight, but opponent has Bowers. Important to start off strong. I pray Bowers doesn't go crazy. Like I said, I think Bowers is an incredible play this week, but I also think that Genty is a good play this week against the Denver Broncos defense. I think that both have a chance to score a touchdown this week. Will Brock Bowers score 2? I hope not for some people, but I hope so for some people who need it. Start 2 flexes between Igbuka, Addison, Sutton, MHJ, Franklin, and Cook. With MHJ and Jacoby Brissett, I think you have to start MHJ. The target share is so much better with Jacoby Brissett than it was with Kyler Murray. And I think that's my mind is not going to change about that. Even though the matchup is a little bit harder, my mind won't change. So I think I'm starting MHJ this week. then if that's James Cook, I absolutely want to start James Cook. But I do like Troy Franklin this week. I do like Igbuka this week. Joe, how you feel about these guys? Where are you at? Let me think about this a little bit.
So I'm big on Franklin. I mean, how can you not be big on Igbuka with Igbuka back? So let's my starters are definitely, and this is the first time I think I've said this all year, Harrison, because Harrison was just tearing it up with an actual quarterback who can throw a timing route. And I'm not going to lie, I have a lot more love for Harrison now that it's making Kyler Murray become unemployable. And I have got a lot of personal bias that's there. This guy should not have been an NFL quarterback for the last 4 years. So I'm definitely on the Harrison bus. And I'm probably on Addison and Igbuka for the other two. That's James Cook. James Cook.
Yeah, but Joe, Minnesota's playing against Baltimore. Baltimore hasn't stopped wide receivers at all.
Yeah, so I think Addison and Cook would be the other two. I think it's going to be Addison, Harrison, and Cook.
Start 2, flex 1, yeah. So for me, it's Addison and Harrison, and I'm flexing James Cook. If I have the luxury of flexing James Cook, I'm flexing James Cook. And that sucks because I do like Franklin this week, but I think Addison's matchup is great, and I'm going to take MHJ there. So unfortunately for you, I'm sitting Franklin, but depends on that running back situation. If I could start Cook and then do Addison, MHJ, and Franklin, I'd do that. Do I start Kyle Pitts or pick up Musgrave? I think that Kyle Pitts is a reasonable play. Kyle Pitts is, guys, this year, Kyle Pitts has been one of the most reasonable plays at tight end. The stat sheets are not going to, they're not going to be anything crazy. It's not going to be like, hey, Kyle Pitts is having another incredible week. It's going to be pretty much average in terms of production, but he's sitting there. Over the last several weeks, he's gotten 8 points, 15 points, 13 points, 5 points, 18 points. He's right there in that top 12 tight end discussion. It's Kyle Pitts. Musgrave is a non-issue for me. But if Fannin can't go, Njoku is a good play this week. So if Fannin can't go, I think that it's very, very reasonable.
I love Njoku.
Into Njoku. So if it were me, if I didn't want to start Kyle Pitts, because nobody ever really wants to start Kyle Pitts, and Fannin is not healthy and Fannin's not playing, then you absolutely would want to start Njoku. The matchup is great. I traded DK and Kincaid for Devonta Smith. Was this a bad move? No. This is a great move. If I can get Devonta Smith on my team right now, that is an incredible move to do because there are going to be competitive matchups.
Jesse, I wouldn't worry about that one.
Be involved. I love that. Citizen, I got offered either Javonte Gibbs or Jacobs for either Puka or CD. I have DK and Quentin Johnston for my other wide receivers. And my running backs are Dobbins and White in PPR. You absolutely need another running back. If I could take any one of those players, this is a really good discussion point because these are all three guys that I absolutely love. The only knock on Jacobs is that he's currently dealing with a little bit of an injury, right? And it's always nagging and whatnot for him. But when you look at the Packers' schedule and you see what's coming down the pipeline for the Green Bay Packers, you're looking, again, fantasy playoffs. You're looking at Broncos, Bears, Ravens. Boy, that's great, right? That is phenomenal. Then when you go to the Lions schedule and you look up, hey, which one of these, where's the Lions facing? We look at Rams, Steelers, Vikings. Again, another phenomenal, but I prefer Jacobs there. And then you look at the Cowboys, who might have more leads depending upon, how the defense plays. You're looking at Chargers, or you're looking at Vikings, Chargers, Commanders. Wow. Talk about nice, right? So For me, I'm on Jacobs, then Javonte, then Gibbs. And when it comes to which player I would want to give up, unfortunately, I would probably move on from Puka. If that meant that I could get a running back of this caliber, and if I was trading Puka, I'd want Jacobs. But you can easily want Gibbs too. That's fine. This is just a preference. I'd try to find a different way to get
Jacobs for CD though.
But
I don't think I want to do that. I don't think I want to do that trade.
I would try to find a different way to get this done because Joe's right. Puka and CD are assets to the.
I don't want to trade either of them.
If I can move DK, like if I could move DK and Quentin Johnston and Dobbins to get into one of those running backs, I'd rather do that. Because DK and Quentin Johnston do really nothing for me if I have Puka and CD. I'm not starting DK or QJ, and I'm perfectly fine hanging out with a Troy Franklin as my wide receiver 3 if that's possible. So if I can move DK, QJ, and Dobbins to move into Jacobs, think about it. But I understand you not wanting to trade Dobbins because you want to get a running back. So if you wanted to, I prefer Jacobs and Javonte, but Joe's giving you a reason why you shouldn't. So I think it's worth more consideration. Jesse, I'm unlikely this week over Fannin. Multiple reasons why. Love that. South, out of Monangai, Tyler Warren, Rachaad White, Jameson Williams, need one running back and one flex. So I think the matchup dictates that Monangai is a great play. Rachaad White's matchup is worse, but he's going to potentially get the bulk of the carries. Now, Sean Tucker did show out a little bit the last week prior to the bye. So there's reason to believe that backfield might be split. I'd rather have the backfield split that has more total carries that will go its way, and that goes to Monangai for me. Out of the flex position, there's reasons to like Jameson Williams. They stated, we want to get Jameson Williams more involved. And guess what they did? They got Jameson Williams more involved. Jameson Williams has a much lower floor than Tyler Warren. So if you're looking for a floor play, it's Tyler Warren. If you're looking for major upside, it's Jameson Williams against an offense against a defense that can't stop anybody either in the Commanders. So for me, it's Monangai and Jameson Williams. How do you feel about that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably it. I mean, what's all said and done there, because everything you just said, that's right.
Yeah. Jesse, would you guys hold on to Sampson or drop him for Tucker?
I'd probably roll the dice with Tucker.
Yeah, I'd probably roll the dice with Tucker too, because he is now the de facto wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
And that means something. Denver defense or Browns defense? I'm on the Browns defense this week. You can't get me not to play the Browns defense against the Jets. You cannot get me not to.
Pretty much the answer.
Tyler Warren over Fannin for sure. Tyler Warren over Fannin for sure for every reason that we said so far. Working on a trade offer for King Henry. And guys, we will get to those deep dives that we have buried down there in the chat. Don't worry about it. Working on an offer for King Henry. Thinking Breece, Debo, K9 for their Henry and Fairbairn. Need a kicker in week 12. Fairbairn is also dealing with an injury this week, so that might not matter. My stars are JT, Judkins, and Rico, so K9 and Hall are benchers. Honestly,
ESPN has Fairbairn listed as out.
But he needs a kicker for week 12. I like where your head's at, but how will Henry fit into your overall lineup? Is he going to slate in as your next flex? So every week you're going to do JT, Judkins, Rico, Henry potentially. I'd do that because K9 has no value to me, Debo has no value to me, and Breece has no value to me when my other starting 3 running backs are JT, Judkins, and Rico. This is trimming the fat to the utmost degree.
Yep.
Do that 100%. I don't even care if I'm getting a kicker back. People will joke about it. I don't even care. You're giving him pure volume. He needs it. He needs to win. So take it. He'll take it because he wants to win a couple games. He doesn't want to be in last place. He doesn't want to get the toilet bowl. So if you can get that done, do that 100%. Yeah, Antonio Brown. It's a shame. He definitely has it. I mean, he's crazy right now. I know it's early, but any thoughts on defense and special teams to pick up during the playoffs, Joe? Your specialty here.
That is early, but for the playoffs, looking at that run there, let's get over to it.
Before we get to the rest of the questions.
It is early. 15. I mean, Houston and San Francisco are jumping off the page for 15. Carolina has an appearance there.
Mm-hmm. Seattle, that game, that end of the season, week 17, that Seattle-Carolina game is really interesting from a defensive perspective. Keep your head on a swivel for that. I think that game interests me a lot.
By far, it's Houston, but they're not going to be on your waiver wire. But by far, the answer is Houston.
I'm really intrigued by the Saints in week 17 against the Titans. Because again, the Titans can't stop anything. The Saints I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it with my full chest right here. If you want a wild card defense that is a weird defensive play and it could end up just biting you in the ass, but the Saints draw arguably, outside of maybe the Panthers, right, with Rico Dowdle there, arguably one of the better matchups here. Saints-Panthers, Saints-Jets, Saints-Titans. If you think about it, it's a heads-up play, but I'm still – they're very far down the list of people that I would want. I would rather have Houston, among all of those guys. Start Monangai, Marks, or JCM. I'm on Marks. I'm on Marks out of those guys because Marks is going to get the lion's share of the carries in an offense championed by Davis Mills this week. And I think that they're going to want to get the ball into Woody Marks' hands.
You really did not want to say that sentence.
As much as possible. Pokey, Nakua, Waddle, Sutton, Ladd, Addison, pick 2 and a flex. Well, as we said earlier, it's Ladd for me, 1,000%. And Puka, obviously, is absolutely one of there. So I've got to go with either Waddle or Addison. I gave you a lot of reasons earlier in the show, Pokey, and you can go back and watch them if you like, about why Waddle's a great play this week. And Addison's a great play against Baltimore. Baltimore has a very hard time generating a pass rush with their best defender down. They ended up trading away some cornerbacks, got some returned back. Addison's a very interesting play for me. But I think from a volume standpoint that it's Puka, Waddle, and Ladd. But from a potential weird upside standpoint, it'd be Puka, Ladd, and Addison. So I'm on Waddle because of the volume over Addison, although I think Addison's a great play this week. Joe, are you similar or what'd you say?
I get where you're at. It's hard for me to get off the Addison bus.
And that's fair. That's fair. Joshua, want to get ahead of Tyler Warren's bye week. Pick up Hunter Henry, Musgrave, Fannin, Mayer, Likely, Freiermuth, Jonnu, or Strange for week 11. It's likely. And you're dropping Golden. Golden's gotten no usage, man. No usage. And so with the return of Jayden Reed potentially, coming down, the reason Likely is the play is even if the matchup is poor for Likely, Lamar gets the ball to his tight ends. So for me, without looking super far ahead, into week 11, it's Isaiah Likely for me. And maybe that will change. Maybe that will change to Freiermuth depending upon how that matchup looks coming next week. But I think Likely is the smart play to go after there. Henry, Dobbins, Bucky, Dowdle, start 2. Again, I'm not benching Rico Dowdle. Everything in my heart of hearts, even if you have 2 players above it, J.K. Dobbins has a great matchup, guys. Over the last 4 games, Vegas has been allowing 26 rushing attempts to running backs. What I worry about is potentially some more usage for guys like AJ or RJ Harvey. Again, they got rid of Audric Estimate, so that's different to me. But when you just go for total rushing attempts, it's Rico Dowdle, hands down, smash the button. Then J.K. Dobbins is the next one up in terms of rush attempts, but tied with him is Derrick Henry. Now, these numbers are off because it has Minnesota as 8th best against running backs, but that's because their reception totals are better against them. J.K. Dobbins isn't getting a lot of those receptions. That's R.J. Harvey. So where Las Vegas is worse, or where they're worse at as defensively against that, R.J. Harvey shines a little bit brighter. So for me in this, even though J.K. Dobbins has a great matchup, it's Derrick Henry and Rico Dowdle, and I'm not even looking back. Is Nix a must start today? Nix is a must start if you've got, other guys like if you were thinking about if you were thinking about starting Jordan Love, or you were thinking about starting Marcus Mariota, or if you're thinking about starting Bryce Young, or Justin Fields, or potentially JJ McCarthy, yeah, Bo Nix is a must start. But again, depends on your lineup. Ricardo, I like Juwan because of the potential volume that's going to go his way, but I like Likely because I think that there is a good amount of touchdown upside in the offense with Lamar. So for me, this goes Likely, Juwan, and then Otten, but I love Juwan this week. Long term, I do like Isaiah Likely. Joe, how do you feel about that?
Me too.
Yeah.
I love Likely long term.
Would you guys drop Debo for Ray Davis? No, I'd trade Debo. I would trade Debo before I would.
I'm not sure Ray Davis is good enough to add to your team right now.
Monangai, Likely, or Tucker this week. I think Tucker. I'm thinking Tucker after looking at all the data. I'm thinking Tucker for sure. Although I like the other two a lot. So let's get into these final deep dives, guys. Thanks for joining us for the show today. We are going to get into these final deep dives before we head out. And Jesse, we got you on your last couple of questions too. Jason, I'm 7-2, and I got an offer of Jamar, Hampton, Woody for Rico, White, Harrison. The hold up is Woody, and I think you cleared through this. I think we cleared through this. I think he did the trade, right, Joe? I think if we go back up, I think the trade ended up happening. So, again, I think it's a phenomenal trade for you.
It did.
Not getting Vidal is fine, but looking at your team right here, seeing you have Barkley, Javonte, Kyron, you got the deal done. You have Chase, London. I think when all is said and done, I think you did a phenomenal job moving Rico. Although like I said, I really like Rico. Moving the pieces that you moved, you made your team so much better. Now you have weekly upside. You have 3 out of the top 10 wide receivers on a given week. You have 3 out of the top 10 running backs on a given week. And then your guys on the flip side, they could show out and perform well for you. Woody especially. So I think that when we look at your team in totality, Joe, I'm going to go to where he posted it here, where he got the trade done. I believe that was a little bit further down here. This team is great, and I have nothing wrong with this team whatsoever. If I can then get out of Sutton most weeks and maybe even start, Woody, sure. I think that's great. My next move would potentially be pairing up, say, Sutton and Nico and going after Puka. If I can be starting London and Chase and Puka every week, slam dunk. I know most people wouldn't agree with that, but if that's what I could do and I'm not worried about, Puka's injuries at all, I'm absolutely doing something like that. KJ, last deep dive of the day, and then we'll get into the last couple of questions that are in the chat. We appreciate everybody joining us today. So start 2, Henderson, RJ Harvey, Sharps, or Vidal. Full PPR, also picked up Ray Davis just in case Cook is out this week. So again, Henderson, if Stevenson doesn't play, is a very interesting play. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on Trevion Henderson because we have already spent a multitude amount of hours talking about Trevion Henderson. But the thing that Trevion Henderson can do well in this matchup is the fact that he can catch the ball. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offer one of the highest reception totals on the slate to running backs. Okay. Now, we had talked about Rachaad White earlier in the day. And, New England does offer a lot of receptions to running backs as well. But again, we're not sure where that's going to go with Sean Tucker or Rachaad White. So again, Rachaad White could be a great play, but the total rushing attempts makes me nervous with a guy like White. But when we talk about Trevion Henderson, for example, this is a great spot for him. Again, the number of rushing attempts is lower. It's around 18 Tampa Bay is giving up. But again, the reception total is what I'm looking at. If I can get Trevion Henderson out in space this week, I think it gives I think it gives the New England Patriots another way to beat Tampa Bay, and that's going to be important. Henderson, I think, is a great play this week from that matchup perspective. Do I think he's going to get a touchdown?
They're not beating Tampa Bay, Bob.
No. Do I think he's going to get a touchdown? No. But do I think that he's going to get the majority of the shares of the running back room if Ramondre Stevenson is out? Yes, I do. And if you're playing catch up, which New England hasn't had to do a lot this year, and you play into that Tampa Bay, I got to pass it to my running back. That's a great spot for Travion Henderson, Joe. Then when it comes to RJ Harvey, like I said earlier, with RJ Harvey, one of the things the Raiders don't do well at all is against the run, right? So Dobbins and RJ Harvey are both guys that you can see yourself walking into starting this week, depending on who you have. Now, if I'm looking at RJ Harvey, his volume isn't great, guys. He's not been a great volume guy on the year. But one of the things that he has done exceptionally well when given the opportunity to is catching the ball. When you go back on the course of the year and you look at throughout the season when he's given opportunities, 3 receptions, he was given 3 in week 3, 3 targets, caught all 3 balls. Week 4, 5 targets, caught 4 of them. Week 5, 3 for 3. Week 6, 4 for 4. Week 7, 1 for 2, and then 1 for 1, and then 5 for 5. The kid catches all the balls that come his way. And that is something that the Raiders are going to give up this week, is they're going to give up room to run, and they're going to give up room for running backs to catch the ball. So there's many reasons why RJ Harvey could be a very interesting play this week. Even though his general shares in the running back room are limited. He's only getting last week, he only got 2 carries. So he only got 7 total touches last week. The week before that, he got 8 total touches. The week before that, he got 6 total touches. So he's not going to go over the threshold that you want to be a startable player. He's not going to go over that threshold of 15 total touches. He's not going to reach it. It's not going to happen. Henderson will get 15 or so total touches. Now, as it goes to Sharps and Vidal, Joe, you said, Vidal's going to get the lion's share of the running back work. Yeah. But with Joe all out, it's not going to be. It potentially might not be great. Last week we saw in a smash matchup, he got 12
out of
carries.
This group, I wouldn't go with Vidal. I'd go with Henderson and RJ.
I think that Henderson and RJ offer you upside, but limited touches, but upside. Sharps and Vidal have more touches, but less upside to me. So it really depends. If you want to flip-flop them and start Henderson and Vidal to kind of balance it out, or if you want to go whole ham. I mean, again, these 4 running backs aren't probably going to be the highest.
Whole ham.
Right? But if you're going for where the upside could be at, it's Henderson and RJ Harvey. And it's weird to say that. But if you're curious about Sharps, on the other hand, Joe, I know you're not necessarily curious about him, but Arizona is giving up around 19 carries to running backs. And this is where Sharps should shine. But the problem is, because this is so evenly split, 19 is not good. I don't want to split 19 carries between 2 running backs that are already splitting all that work. So for me, it's Henderson and RJ. If you want to put Vidal in for RJ Harvey because you don't like his total touch amount, then you can do that. There's no problem with that. You're welcome, CC. You're welcome, Jason. Jesse, Manungai, Hall, or Singletary? Start 2. Joe, how do you
bench
feel
Singletary?
About
that one's easy.
What'd you say?
I'd bench Singletary. That one's easy.
You'd bench Singletary. Okay. Because I am just going to say it, and I think it's, interesting to say. Singletary is an interesting player this week, but the total number of touches is not going to be in his favor. So I think you do have to bench Singletary and start Manungai and Hall.
You throw on the Bears. You don't run on the Bears.
Even though Hall has a worse matchup the matchup is close enough that Hall, with his playmaking abilities, is the guy that you would want over Singletary.
And the amount of touches. This is mostly a volume play. Singletary's not going to get enough touches. He's not as good.
All right, guys, thanks again. So everybody, Local Football Flavor here. Follow, like, subscribe so you see when our next show is. Our next show will be 3:45 Eastern on Monday. We'll be back to answer all your start, sits, lineup questions, share our thoughts. We have a good chat here. We appreciate everybody in the chat. Shout outs to everybody who left a comment, everybody who helped out one another. We'll be back 3:45 on Monday. Good luck this week. Local Football Flavor out.